Now, the link between constituency and MP is obviously in sharp focus this weekend. Not every former Prime Minister enjoyed staying on the backbenches after their time in Number 10, but Gordon Brown did, and he was there for a further 5 years as MP for Kirkcaldy and Cowdenbeath. He joins me now from Fife. Good morning, Gordon Brown. Do you have memories of David Amess?
Yes, my first thoughts, of course, are with his widow Julia and their 5 children. This is a terrible tragedy. I remember David entered the same time as me to the House of Commons. I think he was the person I remember most because almost every question and every speech he made, he always mentioned the name of his constituency. And that shows just how much he was in touch with his local community. Hardworking, determined, caring, compassionate. We've heard all this that emphasises just what a good man of the people he actually was. And this is beyond partisanship. You've got to pay respects to someone who really died doing something that he enjoyed most, which was listening to, consulting, helping, serving his constituents. And I will remember him as a great constituency MP, as I know everybody else will who is in the House of Commons today also.
What, of course, has emerged in the discussion of the aftermath of this dreadful event is the relationship between the Member of Parliament and the constituency. Is there a danger that we now find ourselves willy-nilly having the culture of our democracy in some way eroded because public figures have to retreat behind a wall of security of some kind?
Yeah, Trevor, this is an attack on our democracy. So the answer cannot be less democracy. This looks as if it is a terrorist incident. It is probably related to Al-Shabaab or to Al-Qaeda, and we'll find out more in the next few days. But the answer when you come across a terrorist incident is we don't blink, we don't shirk, we don't flinch, we don't show weakness, we stand up for what we believe, and of course we will increase the security that is available to members of parliament and councillors when they're doing their surgeries, and that is something that must happen immediately. But it's true also to say that we must not allow our democracy to be diminished because a terrorist attack has occurred. I think the history of dealing with terrorism is that if you ever show weakness and you ever give the impression that coexistence is impossible and that you're going to back away and give up on your values, then you show something that gives terrorists hope, and we must not do that. You know, hearts are broken, but our resolve must be unbreakable. A life has been tragically destroyed, but our values, our democratic values, they are indestructible, and we must show that now.
If you were in government now, would you consider, for example, you as a former Prime Minister, I think are entitled to close protection, i.e. bodyguards and so on. Would you favour making that possibility available to members of Parliament now?
Yes, because if there is a risk to anybody who is a member of the general public or a member of Parliament, and the risk is apparent to the police authorities, they will do everything in their power to protect that person. And I think what the Speaker is doing, and Harriet Harman's called for a Speaker's conference on this, is absolutely right. We must say to members of Parliament, of course, be careful where you hold your constituency surgeries in a place that is protected, but at the same time, if you need police protection, that is going to be available. And it need not be obtrusive, it need not be so obvious, but I think the protection has got to be made available now to members of Parliament who feel that there is a risk to what they are doing. And I think that will be introduced in the next few days.
One of the things that I imagine that David Amess, and we both knew him well, would probably be saying, though he's a man of great compassion, kindness, and if this had happened to somebody else, he would be the first to express his sorrow. But I guess he would also be saying that events should not come in the way of public servants continuing to do what the important things they need to do, looking after their constituents. And I want to talk to you about one of the human issues that you've raised, which is, of course, the impact of COVID, particularly in developing countries. When we last spoke, which is back in June, you said that there were millions of doses of vaccines which you thought should be shipped to developing countries were sitting in storehouses in Europe. Where are we on that now?
Well, you're right to ask this question because we've got a detailed report appearing tomorrow that shows there are 240 million vaccines that are lying in Europe and America that are unused, not likely to be used for months. Many of them may go to waste, and that would be criminal, which could immediately be airlifted out to those countries where the level of vaccination is so low that not even the nurses and doctors are protected, and certainly not the elderly vulnerable. And you know, Boris Johnson promised at the G7 that he was going to vaccinate the whole world. He made this bold announcement that by next year everybody would be vaccinated who was an adult in the developing world as well as the developed world. But since then, so little has happened that we now face the possibility that every target is being missed. 10% by September missed, 40% by December likely to be missed, 70% by next year likely to be missed. And so we've got to take action immediately to use these unused vaccines to save lives. You know, 100,000 lives have been saved in Britain because of 100 million vaccines. How many more lives can be saved in the rest of the world if we get these vaccines to people who need them?
You, if I may say so, you used the word criminal there in an answer which you also referred to the Prime Minister. Why do you think this hasn't happened? Is it just incompetence, or is there something deeper going on here?
Yeah, I was talking about neglect, and I do think that this is a lack of coordination. If President Biden, Boris Johnson, Ursula von der Leyen at the European Union, Justin Trudeau, if they came together, they would find that they had these unused vaccines, that they're not going to use them. Even after all the boosters, there are excess vaccines that are not going to be used, and they should get them out as quickly as possible. And month by month, this number of extra vaccines will grow. Another 200 million next month, 200 million by the end of the year, 1 billion in total by January. Now, we've got to get them to the people who need them. Otherwise, people will say that the neglect is unacceptable if 100 million or so vaccines, as we predict, go to waste because they pass their use-by date. This is the biggest public policy failure at an international level for years, outside war, in peacetime. And really, to save hundreds of thousands of lives by using the vaccine, the miracle of which is available to us, is something that needs the coordination of the leaders. Only they can release the vaccines, not the IMF or the World Health Organization. The leaders have got to make that decision. They ordered the vaccines, they over-ordered, and they can now make them available.
If I recall correctly, when we discussed this before, actually, on the very day, I think that the President of the United States was calling a meeting of his fellow G7 leaders to do exactly what you've just said. Why didn't that happen? I mean, why didn't we hear more about that?
Well, I think it was a tragedy that the meeting went round the table. I don't think Boris Johnson was there, from the information that I have, although he was down to speak as right at the beginning of the event. It went round the table, people made promises, but they didn't add up to being enough to get the vaccinations to people at the time that they needed them. And so we have promises about next year, and we have some vaccines going this year, but we'll never meet the 40% target unless we take action now. And that's an airlift. It needs an airlift now.
Did you say that Boris Johnson wasn't in the room when they were talking about this?
Well, Downing Street has refused to confirm that he was there, and yet he made the promise that he was going to get the world vaccinated. And the big summit that was to be held, and was held under the auspices of President Biden, if, as people are saying, he did not attend, then I think he's better answer to the House of Commons about why a promise was made at the G7 that he was going to oversee, and then when it came to the meetings that had to deal with it, a vaccine summit, including the Secretary General of the United Nations, President of the European Union, the Prime Minister of Canada, everybody else was there, Prime Minister Draghi of Italy. We have to ask, what role did he play in that summit?
Can I just briefly return to the issue of this morning and ask you about the tone of politics right now? I spoke both to the Home Secretary and to Lisa Nandy about this, and both of them, I think, seem to confirm what a lot of people are saying, that without wanting to trace this particular event to, the wider political discourse, that there is an edge, an unpleasantness, a coarseness that's entered political speech and debate, which, from their point of view, we could well do without. What is your view?
Yeah, I think you can disagree without being disagreeable. And I think you can have discord without having malice. And too often, I think, political arguments descend into personal attacks and personal conflicts. And I think when it comes to the social media, we've got to look again at the way these algorithms are organized, because they push people towards the most extreme positions. And the media looks to me like a shouting match without an umpire, but the most extreme positions are the ones that come across. Now, this is, I think, partly because of the way that the different media organizations organize their information. And I think something's got to be done to look at online harm that is resulting from this. So, yes, we've got to clean up here, but let us also remember that if this is a terrorist incident, we are dealing with a group of terrorists or a group around a terrorist who believe that coexistence with the West is impossible. And we have got to show by the strength of our democracy and the strength by which we reach out to other countries and call for cooperation that this is not the way that we see the world, and this is not the way the world has got to be. Terrorism has got to be fought directly, head on.
Gordon Brown, thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.